Guys, I'm Andrei, certified tour guide in Minsk, Belarus, and today I'm going to tell you about Pruzhany. It's a small town about 89 kilometers from Brest, lying on the crossroads between Kobrin, Belarus, Shereshevo and Slonim. The town itself is known since the 1400s. One of the versions about the name origin, Pruzhany, is the Prussians who inhabited these parts until Crusaders eliminated them by the 1400s. Another version is about prosa, millet, one of the staple crops in the area at the time. There's half a dozen other versions. We'll talk about them in the museum. Now let's take a quick look around the city. The city is now home to about 20,000 people. It's a district center of the area, so it's a sort of a political hub. And it has some life in there, and a few industries still kicking. The crest of the city, a snake swallowing a baby, comes from the very old days when the city was given the Magdeburg right, the right for self-governance. It looks very much like the crest of Milan, and incidentally, an Italian queen was actually once in charge in our country, like 400 years back, give or take. If you come from southern Belarus, your ancestors, if they ever recalled their home country, must have called it Polessia. In Belarusian, Polessia literally means forest area, and Pruzhany is in the north of Polessia. Polessia was referred to as a sea by ancient Greek philosophers. With time, the sea got shallow, and the whole area south of today's Minsk was more or less a swamp. Rivers Yaselda, Pripyat, Pina, and many others give the area its unique landscape. Because of this, Polessia is very flat. Fields are full of canals and other irrigation installations. The state has been busy making way for arable land throughout the last century. In the past, villages of Polessia were like little islands prodding from marshland. Peasants had to use huge boats to get their cattle to the grass. Towns in the area were often reachable in winter, when the ice allowed peasants to see the cities, sell products of their households, and buy the necessary supplies like salt and matches. A Pruzhany recalled. Pruzhany lay near Brisk, today's Brest, near Poland. Other neighboring towns were Kobrin and Minsk, also populated by large Jewish communities. Pruzhany was a small township whose center consisted of 4 intersecting main streets. This intersection became the location of the commercial center about which the Jewish population concentrated. The non-Jews resided mainly on the outskirts. 6 alleyways in the center of town were inhabited exclusively by Jews, and only 3 of the alleys on the edge of the town were entirely free of Jews. There were a few apartment blocks in Pruzhany, but some houses comprised of 2 or 3 apartments. These were occupied by parents and their offsprings who had married and established families of their own. We shared a 2-family house with my maternal grandmother, who ran a tiny grocery store. Most of the town's families had yards and vegetable gardens where they maintained supplementary farms, a cow to provide milk, a chicken for eggs and meat. As noted, the town consisted of 4 main streets and branching side streets. The town being small, every section was accessible on foot. A few townfolk owned bicycles, some rode pony traps, heavy loads were hauled by horse-drawn carts. There were no motorized vehicles in the town. Pruzhany's crime rate was very low, and there were consequently few policemen to be seen in the streets. The comforts of these houses aren't overwhelming. Just across the street, the wooden houses still go on firewood, keep them warm. Several apartments in this house behind me share these sheds. Firewood is stacked. Everybody does their homework for the winter. Don't ask me what's behind those doors. Just like 100 years back, it's the same. One of the oldest buildings surviving in Pruzhany today is the pharmacy building, dating back to the late 19th century. Remarkably enough, the last owners were pharmacists, even in the Soviet times, until 1946. The pharmacy was on the first floor and they lived on the upper floor. Take a look at this house on the right. There are 2 factors contributing to its current look. Obviously, the foundation might have been very basic, so it sunk into the ground a little bit, but the general reason why this house is level with the street is because the street has been upped in the modern days several times, according to a local. Have a look at this door. In the old days, the door was opened inside the house to prevent the blocking by the snow in winter time. A fairly well preserved complex called White Shops is right in the city center of Pruzhany. 100 years back, life used to be much busier here. Most of the shops, I guess, were selling some stuff, mostly reselling the products of the village to the residents of the city. They were not heated, so story goes the sales ladies in winter, like February, like right now, had to basically stand over pots with coals in them. Occasionally they had little accidents related to that. Before the war, depending on the season, various stuff was on sale here. Mushrooms and berries, products of the village vegetable beds, leek, onion, potatoes, and other sorts of things. The products of the local craftsmen are also on sale, such as pottery, blacksmiths' products, and such like. A lot of imported things that could not be produced locally were on sale as well. The street clearly looks like a pre-war bunch of buildings. I could bet on the 30s. You can feel the scent of smoke. They still use firewood to keep the places warm. One of the central areas in Pruzhany, still what they call private housing. Some long-term planning, local authorities are probably thinking to knock these down and build some high-rises, well, 5 floors, maybe 9 floors maximum. These have gas for cooking and heating. A bit of history on this house here. The wall is called brandma. It's not a software term, but architecture from the old days. This wall allowed the house not to catch fire if the next door building is on fire. Sadly, the 1930s house has had an upgrade in the back there. I'm not sure what kind of architect cleared that, but let's say it's an architectural crime. This beauty looked like this. Then they put in the windows, locked the front, and distorted the back. Looks like a typical mansion from the 1930s with a pretty cute top floor. You can see these in Poland today. Urban houses of the time were more or less the same as the village ones. Even in town one could expect to see a wooden house with earthen floor and straw-covered roof. Of course, by the early 1900s, town buildings always had a stove chimney because of the fire safety standards and high welfare. One of the local students recalled of his original rental from a local widow. His bed was a straw bag on naked earth. There was no floor. There he harbored himself first semester. Richer families could afford a solid wooden or a brick house with several rooms and stoves. They had more refined interiors packed with city furniture and could hire servants to help around the house. I take it before 1795 Russian Empire takeover of today's Belarus, the Russian Orthodox Church here wasn't really a major one. The city folks were mostly Poles and Jews. Jews often outnumbered Poles depending on the town and on the time. And there were more synagogues and Catholic churches in a city in western Belarus than Russian Orthodox churches. This one behind me, the Church of St. Alexander Nevsky, was built on public donations because the state budget quickly ran dry and they had to do some crowdfunding across the whole of the Russian Empire to make it happen. It was unveiled in the late 1860s, if I recall it right. It still serves its purpose. The Catholic Church is now back in operation. It was shut down in 1951 to become a club, and the priest was sent to Siberia. In the 90s he was the first priest to launch the service, and then he became the cardinal of the Roman Catholic Church in Belarus. A student from Bereza recalled, in relation to Bereza, Pruzhany represented a great city with asphalted streets, beautiful brick buildings. Police was in a high brick house, and in general it was a bigger city and more dynamic than Bereza. I was born in a small village and feared that here I could get lost and didn't have where to eat every day. Then I wrote a list, Sunday here, Monday there. I wrote down names of house owners and where they had their house. The first time I should consult the list and ask people how to arrive, but then I habituated myself and knew where everything was by heart. In 1933, a journalist in Pruzhany noted the increasing poverty of the town and surrounding villages. The unemployment of artisans was increasing and the conditions of the merchants deteriorating. The state tax system was destroying commerce completely, and the outcry of Pruzhany tradesmen was being heard outside the town. Use of electricity had declined and many homes had been offered for sale cheaply. Large parts of the population needed the help of relatives in the United States. The Nazis started the war against the Soviet Union on the 22nd of June 1941, and a day later the Wehrmacht entered. The collapse of the market system prompted barter trade. Connections were established with the peasants and later with the partisans. Dangerous signals reached the population about the oncoming violence against Jews, but very few believed them. People were told that the city was a part of the Reich, which guaranteed their safety. Soon the Nazis started pillaging Jewish houses and introduced a series of bans. The mandatory yellow patches were to be worn by the Jews, and they couldn't use sidewalks as they moved around. Judenrat was created, and it took a great effort to ensure order and make any underground activity subside. The Judenrat had to comply with the Nazi orders, collect heavy taxes and supply workforce to different sites. They managed to organize the operation of the workshops, procure firewood and other resources, and ensure food supplies to the charities of the ghetto. In July 1941, the Nazi created the ghetto of Pruzhany, which along with the local Jews accommodated hundreds of Jews deported from Białystok, Slonim and Cheryshevo. The news of mass murder operations in the vicinity motivated the Jews to collect weapons and other supplies and join the partisans. In small groups, the prisoners moved into forest in spite of huge risks. In the last days of the ghetto, in late January 1943, the most determined survivors fought their way out. In early February 1943, the remaining population was transported to Auschwitz within several days. Almost all of them didn't survive. Pruzhany is losing its population. It's a small town, although it's a district center. It's 19,000 strong and it's bound to be dropping. Mostly people are moving to Brest, and Brest is quite close to Poland, so many, I guess, just go to Poland. The schools are still full because local villages have kids driven here, taken here by the buses daily, that they take them back then. And the schools are still kind of busy, but if we were to ask school graduates about their plans, I guess very few tie their life prospects with the city of Pruzhany. The average salary around the town is around 500-600 rubles, which is well under 300 bucks by now, and it's gonna drop over this year because we are bound to have some economic issues very soon. The enterprises that are still kicking are the dairy factory, run by Dannon, by the way, and linen factory produces fabrics, and a few others, including the factory for construction materials and tinned foods. Because Pruzhany is in the south of the Republic and summer period here is warmer than on average in the country, agriculture may be a good way out for the locals, and private farming is particularly active here. Well, one of the reasons is because the government sector is simply quite dead as an employer. Today's central square of Pruzhany has an inescapable monument to Lenin just in front of the local government house. Area like this with Lenin in the center and a huge square is typical for today's Belarusian cities. It will be inescapably the venue for all local celebrations like Victory Day, Independence Day, the harvest holiday and such like. The place has the tranquility typical of provincial cities. It's the middle of the working week, so everybody working is probably at work. As you see, the street behind me is overcrowded. This tranquility forces the younger ones look for a better fortune somewhere like Minsk. Or since Poland is close, I guess many school graduates here will be looking to enter Polish university that have quotas for local school graduates. Dear friends, thank you very much for watching this video, hopefully till the end. I'll be happy for any feedback, likes, dislikes, comments or questions about Pruzhany and other ancestral towns of yours in Belarus, or maybe just about small towns that you're interested in and not necessarily have any relation to it. If your ancestry is from this town, I can get you connected with the research community on Facebook. Basically, you can find a group of the Pomerantz family researching their genealogy. And as always, I'll be happy to see you in Belarus someday and hopefully take you to your ancestral roots. Well, thank you for any donation to the channel. This will help me to make similar videos which are coming in this season. I hope that the political issues in Belarus will get resolved the way the majority of the people wish that, and I'm hoping that this year or maybe next year I'll be happy to tour you personally and take you to your ancestral town here in Belarus. Travel wisely and hoping to see you in Minsk someday. Cheers!